From the moment I sat down today, I could already feel the weight of everything that has been unfolding not just in Hollywood, but within this tangled situation involving Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, and everyone who somehow got pulled into the storm surrounding their movie. Before I get into the detail, though, I want to take a moment to acknowledge something simpler. Yesterday, so many of you left the sweetest messages about the blouse I wore. Honestly, I wasn't expecting anyone to notice it, let alone comment about how lovely it looked. I read each message and felt so touched. Sometimes I forget that behind the camera there are real people who care, who pay attention, and who make this whole experience feel less lonely. It reminded me how fortunate I am to have this community. For those who asked, I had picked that blouse up at a discount store, a soft navy piece from a small brand that cost around $39. Nothing fancy, but it made me feel nice for the day, and apparently you all thought so too. So thank you. Your kindness really does mean more than you know. But as we always do, we have to transition from the warm moments into the whirlwind that is the entertainment world. And today is no small day, because this is when a huge amount of evidence connected to Justin Baldoni's motion for summary judgment was expected to potentially become unsealed. He filed that motion with an astonishing 275 attachments, and out of those, 183 were sealed, most of which came directly from Blake Lively's side or from people closely connected to her. It's clear she does not want these documents reaching the public. Yesterday, she pleaded with the judge, practically begging for more time to go through everything. Her team's request wasn't subtle. They wanted delays, extra days, anything to stall what feels inevitable. What makes this even more telling is how Baldoni's team responded. They fired back by saying that Blake has almost certainly seen most, if not all, of this evidence already. With the massive legal team she employs, some of the best firms in the world, they argued that she absolutely has the resources to review these documents quickly. And beyond that, Baldoni's lawyers made a point many people agree with. The public deserves to know the truth. At this moment, the judge has still not ruled, and we are left waiting again, watching this tug-of-war play out in real time. But that wasn't the only development. The judge also called for an unexpected emergency hearing set for Monday. This one revolves around a company called Jones Work, which had been dragged into the middle of this mess after Blake and Ryan's side subpoenaed them. The purpose: they wanted access to an old employee's phone so they could pull specific text messages, ones they believe could help Blake form her narrative. It's shocking how deep this has gone. The request wasn't about obtaining the full truth, but rather about cherry-picking selective messages that could hurt Baldoni while supporting Blake's claims. Now, there seems to be resistance from one or more parties involved, which is why the judge stepped in. My guess: this probably has something to do with the man named Vanzen, whose role in this situation has been mysterious from the start. But here's the irony that has everyone talking. Blake has now aligned herself with Jones Work, the very company she previously insisted was responsible for smearing her through Baldoni's team. Suddenly, they're partners working side by side, united in trying to dig up anything that could serve their mutual interests. It's the oldest Hollywood saying in action: the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And we're seeing it play out in the most dramatic way. What's becoming more obvious by the day is the desperation from Blake's side. They need something, anything that can solidify their accusations. Because right now, after months and months of headlines, interviews, legal filings, and leaks, they still don't have strong evidence. That's why every time Baldoni releases actual documents, Blake's team scrambles to flood the press with new stories within the next 48 hours to distract, redirect, and shape public perception. It's a cycle, almost predictable now. Another person who finally stepped into the spotlight is Colleen Hoover, the author of the book the movie was based on. She gave an interview to Elle magazine and claimed she didn't know anything about the issues happening behind the scenes during filming. This confused people because she publicly sided with Blake when the lawsuit first went public. She praised Blake, calling her honest, kind, and supportive, words that carried influence since Hoover's fan base is enormous. But now, suddenly, she is distancing herself and calling the entire situation a circus. Her wording feels like someone trying to backtrack without admitting she might have made a mistake by choosing sides too quickly. What's even more surprising is that she admitted she has her own story but doesn't want to reveal it. Yet she also said she didn't know what was happening. The contradictions spill all over the page. And it's frustrating because many believe that if she truly wanted clarity or justice, she would at least be honest about what she heard or saw. But instead, she's retreating into silence while simultaneously saying she feels terrible about how the lawsuit affected her personally, especially how it impacted her relationship with her book. She claimed she can no longer recommend it and feels embarrassed to mention her involvement. It's difficult to sympathize with that when she played a part in amplifying one side without verifying the truth. Meanwhile, Ryan Reynolds has found himself in yet another round of headlines, but this time because of comments he made while speaking at a summit in New York. He joked about his children, calling them spawns of Satan, and talked about his parenting style, describing himself as a soft parent who rarely yells or punishes. People found it interesting, some even strange, that he can make jokes like this without backlash, but when Baldoni makes a simple sarcastic comment, it gets turned into ammunition against him. It shows the double standard that's existed since this situation began. And speaking of sarcasm, let's talk about that infamous bar scene that Blake's team keeps referencing. Media outlets had published claims about what Baldoni supposedly said during that moment. Statements that no one could actually hear clearly in the recording. Blake twisted this scene into a narrative of inappropriate comments, but the footage tells a different story. The tone was casual, lighthearted, and not at all the way she described. Even the comment about missing the HR meeting was framed in the complaint as though it were some shocking declaration, when in reality it appears to have been a sarcastic remark made in passing during a long, exhausting day of filming. But Blake and her team latched onto it, even twisting it when they leaked to the press, changing HR meeting into something far more damaging. The goal was clear: connect Baldoni's name to harmful keywords that could permanently affect his reputation. These tactics reveal a lot about how far her team is willing to go. And yet, in her public statements early on, Blake positioned herself as someone trying to pull back the curtain on harmful behavior in Hollywood. But what has she actually done since then to help anyone but herself? How many people has she advocated for? How many women has she supported? None. Instead, several innocent women were dragged through the mud as collateral damage in her efforts to win a legal fight. And that is the part that continues to shake people the most, because instead of lifting anyone up, Blake's entire approach seems built on carefully sculpting a public image that benefits only her. Every time something doesn't align with that image, she pushes back with another wave of claims, another press release, or another leak meant to tilt the spotlight in her direction. But behind the curtain, what everyone inside the industry whispers is much less flattering. They say she has always been extremely protective of how she is portrayed. So protective, in fact, that she has been known to block, edit, or negotiate anything that could make her seem less than perfect. And now, that same obsession with her image might be the very thing dragging this case out longer than anyone expected. As the lawsuit keeps unfolding, you can practically see her team trying to keep their grip on the narrative. They understand that once those sealed documents come out, if the judge decides to unseal them, public opinion could shift dramatically. They're worried, because many of those documents were prepared by Baldoni's side, not hers. If even a fraction of them contradict her claims, it will send shockwaves through the entire situation. That's why delaying the release has become priority number one for her. Not because they genuinely need time, but because time is the only advantage they have left. Meanwhile, Baldoni's team has been preparing for months, organizing their evidence, bringing forward witnesses, drafting detailed accounts, and backing up every claim with documentation. It's obvious they want everything out in the open because the truth in their eyes helps them, not her. And if the truth helps one side and hurts the other, the side resisting transparency becomes easy to identify. That's part of the reason the judge's decision to call for an emergency hearing raised so many eyebrows. Emergency hearings don't just happen unless something behind the scenes has escalated to a point where immediate intervention is required. And in this case, it likely means the judge is tired of the games being played. Even people outside the legal world can feel it. There's this sense that the court is slowly losing patience with the endless back and forth. And if the judge begins to suspect manipulation or stalling, the consequences can be severe. Judges don't like theatrics, and they don't like being used as tools to shape public narratives. They want order, truth, and efficiency. When one side disrupts that, the judge often responds by taking tighter control. Now, what really turned heads was the possibility that Blake's team might have been trying to access private information from people who weren't even central to the case. That entire situation with Joan's work and the former employee's phone suggested something deeper. Maybe fear that Baldoni's evidence includes testimony or communications they weren't prepared for. Why else would they be going through unrelated people's devices? It's the sort of move you make when you're not confident in your own material. And if that's the case, it paints a troubling picture of just how unstable her strategy really is. On top of all that, the public has started to revisit some of Blake's past behavior, especially during the filming process. Several extras and minor crew members who were present on set have slowly started to share their own experiences, and many of them offer a very different interpretation of events than the one Blake presented. They describe a tense atmosphere, but not because of Baldoni. Instead, they talk about the pressure created by external expectations, the weight of fan scrutiny, and the discomfort of working under a microscope. Some said Blake withdrew whenever anything didn't go exactly the way she wanted. Others said she tried to exert quiet control over certain scenes, even over things that weren't her responsibility. It wasn't dramatic enough to make headlines at the time, but looking back now, people wonder if those small tensions grew into something larger in her mind. There were also rumors that she struggled with some of the scenes emotionally, not in a harmful way, but in a way that made her hyper-aware of how she would appear on screen. And when you mix personal insecurities with public pressure and a demanding shooting schedule, things can easily get blown out of proportion. That's why several insiders believe this lawsuit stems less from mistreatment and more from frustration, ego, or miscommunication. Not a popular opinion online, but you hear it often behind closed doors. Meanwhile, the public's reaction has shifted from outrage to exhaustion. At the beginning, Blake had nearly everyone on her side. She was seen as the brave woman speaking up, standing firm against a powerful man. But as more inconsistencies appeared, and as it became clear she had been controlling how much information reached the media, people started questioning things they never questioned before. Why were so many files sealed? Why was she afraid of transparency? Why did her story keep shifting? Why did she stay quiet for so long after launching the initial allegations? And why did she seem to care more about shaping public sympathy than providing evidence? These questions aren't small. They grow louder every week, especially as Baldoni's side continues releasing documentation to support their claims. Transparency has worked in his favor, even if people were hesitant to believe him at first. He brought forward full email threads, production logs, witness statements, and clips that showed the context Blake tried to erase. And every time something publicly contradicts her narrative, her team responds with another attempt to sway opinion rather than clarify the facts. The public isn't blind. They see the cycle. They recognize patterns. And the more Blake pushes emotional storytelling without showing proof, the more skeptical people become. For celebrities, especially women, this type of skepticism is unfairly harsh at times. But in this case, the pattern is too consistent to ignore. Another odd development is how Blake's allies have slowly faded away. At the beginning, several celebrities quietly liked her posts or reposted supportive comments. But now, most of them have gone silent. It's not that they switched sides. It's simply that industry insiders don't want to attach themselves to something that might collapse. In Hollywood, distance is protection. And when people start distancing themselves, it's usually a sign that someone behind the scenes has seen or heard information that hasn't gone public yet. You can even see the shift on social media. Comments that were once full of blind support have turned into cautious remarks, uncomfortable questions, or outright doubt. Fans who once said, "We believe you," now say, "We just want the truth." That shift alone is enormous. Once public trust begins to crack, it doesn't repair easily. At the same time, Baldoni's reputation has started to rebound. Slowly, quietly, steadily. He's not flaunting this moment or attacking Blake with the same intensity she used against him. Instead, he keeps presenting documents and letting the evidence speak for itself. It's a strategy that older audiences appreciate more because it reflects patience and dignity. People begin to wonder why Blake doesn't adopt the same approach. If she truly had strong evidence, she wouldn't need to delay anything. She wouldn't need to lobby for time. She would let everything come out and trust the truth. But her behavior suggests the opposite. And then there's the personal toll. Ryan's jokes about parenting and demonic children may have been harmless humor, but the timing was unfortunate. For many people, his joking tone clashed with the serious nature of the case involving his wife. Instead of showing unity or support, it came across as avoidance or detachment. Some even felt he was trying to distract from the lawsuit by leaning into his comedic persona. And while he has always been that witty, sarcastic personality, sometimes humor feels strange when the situation around you is anything but funny. As for Blake, her public absence speaks volumes. She rarely appears except when it serves her narrative. Gone are the warm, casual posts about life or family. Gone are the spontaneous interactions with fans. Everything is curated, timed, and intentional. And when a celebrity shifts from being openly engaging to carefully controlled, it usually indicates internal anxiety. Her silence is not calmness, it is strategy. And strategy, in a moment like this, usually signals fear. And as all of this continues unfolding around her, what becomes even clearer is that Blake is no longer steering the moment the way she once hoped. At first, she believed the court of public opinion would protect her, that sympathy alone would carry the weight of her claims. But with each passing week, that protective cushion has thinned. Now she faces something far more daunting, the slow, steady arrival of facts. Facts that don't adjust themselves to emotions. Facts that don't bend just because a celebrity wants them to. Facts that are coming whether she's ready or not. And for a woman who has spent her entire career managing how she is perceived, the idea of losing control over a narrative this large is frightening. People who have worked around her say she has always been extremely aware of how others view her. Every appearance, every interview, every little moment is considered and shaped so she looks calm, wholesome, and admired. But a legal case does not allow that kind of shaping. Once these documents are unsealed, once the judge makes a ruling, once the testimony becomes public, nothing she does can edit it. And that is the reality she has been avoiding. This is no longer the world of entertainment where PR experts can rewrite a scene or soften an argument. This is the world of sworn statements, timestamps, and contradicting accounts that don't disappear just because someone wishes they would. Her team can sense this shift too, and that is why they move so cautiously. They know that one wrong step could send the entire structure collapsing. It is why they have been selective about what they address and what they ignore. It is why they avoid going line by line against Baldoni's evidence, even when the public asks for clarity. They know answering every question means exposing every inconsistency, and that is not something they are prepared to do. The entire strategy seems built on waiting out the clock in hopes that public attention drifts, that something else in Hollywood catches fire and steals the spotlight away from her situation. But this case has a way of resurfacing every time someone believes it is fading. Meanwhile, Baldoni's legal team grows increasingly confident. They've been gathering statements from people who were present on set, from assistants who witnessed interactions firsthand, and from individuals who worked behind the scenes, unnoticed but attentive. Many of these accounts paint a picture that looks nothing like the one Blake described. They detail moments where she seemed distant, overwhelmed, or quick to interpret harmless interactions as something more personal. They mention how the pressure of carrying the film weighed heavily on her, especially during emotionally intense scenes. Some even said they believed she internalized that pressure so deeply that she began seeing conflict where none existed. And now that these voices are lining up behind Baldoni, it becomes harder for her supporters to dismiss them. These aren't anonymous online trolls, they're people with names, with careers, with memories of what truly happened. Their accounts are consistent with each other, calm and factual. They lack the dramatic flair that sometimes accompanies big accusations. Instead of forcing emotion, they simply state what they saw. That quiet honesty carries weight, especially with older audiences who value plain truth over theatrics. It's the kind of testimony judges pay attention to. What also raises questions is how Blake alternates between silence and sudden bursts of public emotion. One week she is quiet, letting her lawyers handle everything. The next week she releases a tearful statement or a carefully written message full of vague hints, but no specifics. It almost feels like she's trying to remind the public to stay sympathetic without offering anything the court can use. But emotional appeals lose their power over time. When repeated too often, they begin to feel more like tactics than truths. Older viewers, especially, notice when a person leans too heavily on sentiment instead of clarity. They've lived long enough to recognize the difference between genuine vulnerability and strategic timing. This is why the public now watches her with a different kind of gaze, one that sees through the rehearsed polish. There is a quiet reckoning happening around her, and she can feel it. She knows that one day soon, the court will make a ruling that is out of her hands. She knows that once the documents become public, people will revisit every statement she ever made and compare it to the evidence. And if the evidence contradicts her, the consequences won't just be legal. They will reshape her legacy in ways she never imagined. Meanwhile, the emotional strain on her family grows heavier. Ryan tries to maintain his usual lighthearted persona, but the timing is off. His jokes land differently now, almost hollow, because they seem disconnected from the seriousness of what his wife is facing. Supporters expected him to be the steady presence at her side, offering calm reassurance and solidarity. But instead, his public tone feels like a step away from the situation, not a step toward it. And whether he realizes it or not, the public notices. Silence would have been better than forced humor, because silence at least communicates thoughtfulness. Instead, this scattered tone makes their household seem unaligned, almost fractured. As for Blake, the pressure is clearly overwhelming her. Some insiders say she has withdrawn from even her closest confidants, trusting only a tiny handful of people who agree with her version of events. Others say she has grown increasingly reactive, insisting that people are out to tarnish her reputation, even when no evidence supports that fear. When a person begins closing off the world, refusing any viewpoint that doesn't confirm their own, it becomes nearly impossible for them to see what is really happening. That isolation creates a kind of emotional tunnel vision, where every challenge feels like an attack and every contradiction feels like betrayal. This is likely why she has struggled to move forward. When a person cannot admit even small mistakes, bigger truths become impossible to confront. Her entire identity has been built on being admired, being seen as effortless, being seen as the actress who never falters. But life doesn't work that way. And when real conflict comes, conflict that cannot be smoothed out with a new hairstyle, a polished interview, or a pretty dress, it shakes people who rely on external validation. It exposes the foundation of their confidence, or reveals that there wasn't much foundation at all. Meanwhile, Baldoni's steady approach stands in stark contrast. He has not mocked her, has not escalated publicly, has not tried to turn the world against her. He has walked through the fire with patience, trusting the process instead of panic. And whether people like him or not, that calmness impresses older audiences, who see dignity in restraint. This difference between them becomes more striking every day. One side reacts emotionally, releases statements, and asks for sympathy. The other side provides documents, evidence, and waits for the truth to speak. And over time, truth always speaks louder. People around Hollywood are already bracing for what comes next. They know that once the judge makes a ruling, the fallout will be enormous. If the evidence shows she exaggerated or misrepresented events, the industry will not protect her the way it used to. Hollywood forgives many things, but it does not forgive public embarrassment, especially when it drags others down. If she is found to have acted unfairly, the consequences won't be limited to this case. It could affect future roles, endorsements, partnerships, and even friendships. Trust, once damaged, is hard to reclaim. But if the evidence supports her and proves she was harmed, the consequences will fall entirely on Baldoni. That's why people watch this case so intensely, because careers, reputations, and futures hang in the balance. Yet the more information that leaks, the more people lean toward the belief that things were not as Blake portrayed them. And that possibility frightens her more than anything else happening. In the end, the truth will not be shaped by emotion, pressure, or public image. It will be shaped by documents, by facts, by what people genuinely witnessed. And once that truth arrives, it will follow both of them for the rest of their lives. Blake may have believed she could guide this story, but stories guided by fear always unravel. The more she tries to hold the narrative tightly in her hands, the more it slips through her fingers. And when the day finally comes that the full truth is revealed, she will have no choice but to face it without scripts, without edits, and without the emotional shield she's been using to protect herself from accountability. When that moment happens, Hollywood will not judge her by how softly she speaks or how tearfully she writes. They will judge her by what the evidence says. And whatever the evidence shows, good or bad, that is the version of Blake Lively the world will remember. In the end, what this entire journey reminds us is that even the brightest stars in Hollywood carry stories far more complicated than what the cameras ever show. Blake Lively's strength, her quiet resilience, and the way she continues to move forward despite pressure, rumors, and expectations prove that she is not just a celebrity. She is a woman who has learned to stand her ground with grace. And as fans who have watched her grow over the years, we are reminded that fame does not protect anyone from life's challenges. It only magnifies them. So whether she is facing unfair criticism, navigating behind-the-scenes industry politics, or simply trying to raise her children with dignity, Blake continues to show us what true perseverance looks like. And maybe that's why people still root for her so deeply. Not because she's perfect, but because she keeps choosing authenticity in a world built on illusion. As this story moves forward, one thing is certain: Blake Lively's voice isn't fading, it's becoming stronger. And you can bet Hollywood is paying very close attention.